anytime you're ready. Why don't you just say whatever comes into your head? Yep, you can start anywhere. Yeah, whatever comes into your head. You can start anywhere.
Okay, I don't know where to start. I mean, do I start should I start with my childhood? Or do I go for the show business stuff?
Sure.
I'm such a New Yorker. The other day I'm coming home, and my wife and daughter have locked themselves out of the house, but I keep going because I don't want to get involved. You don't think I should open with a joke?
No.
I know it sounds like the beginning of everybody else's book. Should I be serious about this? I mean, well, what did you ask Nancy Reagan? That's why I hired you to do the job. You know what to ask, and you know how to get it out of me. Maybe I should start by talking about my father, because, it seems like I'm becoming more and more like him every day. My wife describes me as Sidney Katz with really good bladder control. He was born in New York City. His parents came here when he was an infant from Budapest, or Budapest, as he's fond of saying. He is the least direct human being in the world. First of all, he can't describe anything in emotional terms. If he's not feeling good, then he'll say he's at 6s and 7s. We were driving from the airport the other day, and it was getting dark out. And rather than suggesting I put my headlights on, he says, "John, I notice a lot of guys have their headlights on." Yeah, he lives in New York by himself. Well, he has a lot of what he calls his lady friends. He's 84. And that's tough, because you wake up one morning and you're above the recommended age for Scrabble. But I grew up I guess it was a typical Jewish home in Brooklyn. Always food on the table. Sometimes it would sit there for weeks. It was disgusting. I was a little kid. I would get picked on. So my father enrolled me in the local martial arts academy, where once a week I would get beaten in a more formal setting. I remember how clannish kids can be, how cruel. I know I was. I hung out with the other bald kids. We lived in Manhattan. Then when I was 15, we moved to Queens for 2 years. My mother died during those 2 years. My sister flipped out. We moved back to Manhattan, my father and I. He's remarried 4 times since then. One woman twice. When I was a senior in high school, it was kind of a crazy period to me. I was obsessed with ping pong in those days. I don't know if you know, I'm a former New York State ping pong champion. That was my whole life, I could have gone to China. That was in 71. I used to play in tournaments, but the prize money in tournaments is pathetic. You make money in ping pong by hustling. And I used to go around colleges, and my main hustle was I would approach some guy and say, "I'll spot you 15 points in 21 game, plus during every point I have to recall some kind of painful experience from my adolescence." That was his handicap. It was sort of like a dysfunctional college, The idea of having a career, not just me, but of anybody having a career, seemed totally absurd to me.
Sure.
Although I went to a school where that was not a very popular theme, being an adult. I only really had one good part. I played the part of the boy in the Fantastics. This is before I lost my hair. My big setback in college theater was I auditioned for Peter Pan, because I liked wearing those kind of clothes in college. The music is wonderful. Well, from 1971, when I got out of college, till 1974, I didn't have a job. I sold curtains at Curtain World for a summer. I wasn't drafted. I actually got out of the draft about 6 months later by buying an ounce of a junkie's urine.
No.
Which was not that uncommon in those days. You know what an ounce of junkie's urine costs today? If I had saved that, my father, who is incredibly supportive of anything I wanted to do, suggested to me in a very gentle way that maybe I should have a trade. He just spent a fortune on college and realized that I have no skills. He suggested plumbing. Now, I have no mechanical skills, nor do I like other people's mechanical problems. So we came up, with piano tuning instead of something that might provide an income. It was, sort of had some kind of musical background. So I took a crash course with a guy named Carmi, who was an Israeli and the author of the Lost Piano or something. He was a nut. The guy was a real, genuine nut. But about a week later, I applied for a job as a piano tuner at Northwestern University in near Chicago. And this was my big piano tuning break. And I meet the head of the music department, who's a blind piano tuner himself. And he says, "Well, I'm not interested in your background. I just really want to see that you can tune a piano." So he leads me down this long corridor. The practice rooms on either side of the corridor.
Yep.
And and they have glass windows in the rooms. I said, "You want me to tell you when we get to an empty room?" He got very indignant. He said, "I've been teaching here for 30 years. You don't have to tell me anything. I'll tell you when we get to an empty room." Stops in front of a door, the one door that doesn't have a window in it. Opens the door. He says, "I'll be back to hear your work in a half hour." I look inside. It's a broom closet. But I don't want to say anything because the guy's obviously... So I go in. I figure I'll wait until he's out of earshot. So I go in the broom closet. Door closes behind me. He's out of earshot. I'm locked in. 3 months later, I finished all the cleaning fluid.
Uh-huh.
See, all the mistakes I've made in this business have been in picking who I have representing me. You know, it took a long time to select a manager. What I didn't realize is that you select a manager by examining who they represent and how they're doing. My manager had one other client, the Loch Ness Monster. You know, she said to me, "You can be a big fish in a small pond." No visibility. That should have tipped me off. You just don't learn. You know, the stakes are so high.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know the first time, and even the second time, whether or not you can rise to the occasion. That's really what you're wondering about. He brags about me to his friends, and he's supportive, but he's never really been able to grasp what I do for a living. He thinks I'm a Canadian. You know, I think he would love it if I had a salary, I think. You know, we have a complicated relationship. We had dinner last night. He's in town, and I made a classic Freudian slip. I meant to say, "Can you pass me the salt, please?" But it comes out, you putz, you ruined my childhood. In high school, he sort of disappeared from my life. You know, my mother was dying of cancer. I was sort of like, what's another word for an observer? A witness to my own life. I really was sort of like watching my family. You know, I wasn't participating. It was too emotionally violent for me. First of all, for him to go to college went against the grain of his family. And then when he got out of college, he was sort of coerced into going into the family business. His father was a hitman for the Quakers. No, his father was in the brassiere business, so my father sold brassieres.
Yep.
And still works, actually. He's 84 years old and still working now. You know, there's a weird thing about comedy. The stupider the audience is, the harder it is to do clever puns. It's not that they don't get them, as they resent them. It's like I do a joke now, which is my favorite joke to tell, and that the best response it gets is sort of like a mean groan, you know? And I say, you know, I've been to 3 funerals this month, and I'm not a mourning person. Hey, enough about me.